Hello, everybody. My name is Brad Cruz. I am the Associate Vice President of Alumni Relations at Case Western Reserve University. Welcome, Page Turners, which is our online book club. We've been doing this, I think this is our fifth one we've done. We enjoy doing this. Done in concert with Think Forum. What our office has been doing recently in the past couple of weeks is we've been doing summer send-offs. And this just fits right in because we're at the advent of the start of the fall semester. And toward this, the book we're going to talk about was The Common Reading. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Karen. But one last thing, we've got everybody just mute yourself. If we need to unmic, we will. If we need to, ask you to unmute yourself, please do it then. With that said, take it away, Karen.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Case Western Reserve University Page Turners. Here's our book, The Common Reading. It will be part of the Think Forum, as all of our books are. Now, I'm speaking to you in the future, those of you in the future who are watching this online, because I can see on YouTube that a lot of people are watching it later. If you're watching this later, please search on the CWRU website for Page Turners and for Think Forum so you can join us live, because then you can participate in the discussion. You can ask questions. For those of you who are joining us live today, please put in the chat if you have questions. If you want to say something, you can put in the chat, I want you to read my question, or I would like to talk my own self. Put that in the chat. And all of you in the future seeing this, you can do that if you join us live. So, without further ado, we are talking about Against Technoableism by Ashley Shue. And joining me today is Carmen Garrett. Carmen is the Associate Director of Disability Resources within the Division of Student Affairs at Case Western Reserve University. So, Carmen, please tell us about yourself and your role at the university.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I just want to express my appreciation for having me here today. It's really exciting. Thank you. My name is Carmen Garrett. I am, as you said, the Associate Director of Disability Resources in the Division of Student Affairs, which means I am here for the students. We work in our office year-round to make sure students have access to classrooms, to testing, to extracurricular activities, and to housing. So that's what we do day in and day out, is accessibility for Case Campus.
Oh, terrific. As I said, this book is The Common Reading, and it will be Monday afternoon, August 18th at the Ville Convocation Center that will be part of the university welcome, like all Think Forums, because of generous support of sponsors and donors. This is free and open to the public. So you are welcome to come. Also, it's available online, so you can watch it virtually. Now, technoableism, that's big word right there in the title. Maybe you'd not heard that word before. And I believe that Ashley Shue actually coined that word. And I think her work in that is why she was actually recruited to write this book. She says, technoableism is a belief in the power of technology that considers the elimination of disability a good thing, something we should strive for. It's a classic form of ableism, bias against disabled people, bias in favor of disabled ways of life. So can you talk a little about technoableism?
Sure. So I see technoableism as a particular brand of ableism. Basically, it says that we are trying to fix, or that we can fix, disability, instead of looking at what the disabled person can offer us just in their own body. So I think technoableism is a way of maybe not looking at the person as an individual, and also not appreciating that some things that are disabilities actually give people other strengths. And that's what I think we need to focus on in terms of, when we're looking at the whole individual.
So, the term disability is going to come up a lot here. And Ms. Shue says, disability describes a mere difference. Now, the prefix dis used to mean not. I mean, it was basically disability sort of meant not able. And it has turned now that this term, the movement encourages everyone to use the word disability. There's even a Say the Word campaign. And she says, I love the word came from our community, reclaiming the word disability as a part of disabled identity. So can you speak to that, that the use of the term, how long you've been seeing that? And
I think my whole professional career, disability has been the term that I've seen. I've seen other terms, but they've fallen out of favor. I think the thing about disability that's powerful right now is because it is being reclaimed by the community as something where they can see themselves in. There's power in words. So I think for them, disability means maybe there's something that I can't do a certain way, but I can do it another way. So disability in one way doesn't always mean disability for something else. Yeah.
So the word we used to use, and we still use for parking places, is handicapped. Can you talk a little about that word?
Well, what I know about the word handicap comes from myth, basically in that people had their caps in their hands and were asking for handouts. Obviously, disabled people today do not want to be associated with people who have no place or nowhere to take care of themselves. So I think today the term is more a community term. It is an inclusive term. And that's where I think the author is trying to take us, thinking about disability as a label, but a label that can be reclaimed for people thinking about how they can move forward.
Yes. Well, it's interesting. I've read the actual use of the term handicap started with horse racing. So in racing, if some horses were faster, to make it a exciting race, some horses would be given a weight so that they would be slower, so they could even the playing field. And then it was taken on in golf. The handicap in golf was used first.
So sort of the opposite of accessibility.
Right, right. But then it sort of goes to equity, what people need. I love that illustration of equity that shows the three children, right, trying to see over the fence. There's a tall boy, an average sized boy, they're all boys, and a little boy, and they give them all the same size stool, and still only the tall boy can see.
Right.
But they need different levels of help to be equitable.
Right.
So,
and that's what we do in our office. I think when we look at each individual student, we are looking at not only where is their disability, but where is their ability and what strengths do they have? And not only where are they right now, but where may they be after 3 years of being a case and having our support? And we hope that with our support, they will understand how to adapt and move these barriers themselves. And this is more skill building than just offering access.
Yes. Well, and you've been seeing this. I mean, even though you're young in your career, you have been doing this for a number of years.
Yes, I started out in K-12. So I started out with the little ones, doing IEPs, which are plans for children who need special education, and now in higher education. So I've seen the full gamut. And what I've learned is that over time, people do make their own adaptations. And I think that's what Ashley Shu is asking us to remember, is that we are not making technologies at people. We want to make them with people. So bringing more people to the table to talk about disability technologies earlier on the process, I think is what she's calling for in the book.
Yes. And we're talking more openly now about differing abilities, about mental health challenges, about disabilities. And I think, it's, of course, improved things for everyone. I remember back, I guess in the early 90s, where a professor I knew, he's since passed away, but he was saying, they want me to give this student who has ADD like 2 hours to take this test. And, why do I need to give him 2 hours? And I was like, well, you know what? He's not going to know any more in 2 hours than he knows in 45 minutes. And if it bothers you, give everybody 2 hours.
Let's remove the fence.
Let's remove the fence. So, but I think by and large, our faculty all understand these issues now, which they didn't 30 years ago.
And I've had such good conversations with faculty when faculty call our office and they ask for support. That's one of the things I wanted to get out of this conversation too, is that we are here for faculty too, in terms of helping them implement these accommodations, supporting them in understanding these accommodations, because some of these things might be newer for them.
Right.
They were not there when they went to grad school. So we are helping them understand where the technology is today and where they may be able to make some choices with a universal design that could benefit all their students.
Exactly. Exactly. I remember talking to a teacher years ago. My younger son is dyslexic, and I talked to his teacher, and then later she said, now when I explain something, if I look at him and he looks confused and I say it again, I noticed that everybody is saying, oh, because everybody was confused, right? So, making the accommodation helps everyone.
Helps everyone, essentially, yeah.
So, another definition I wanted to get out from the book, because this is something we talk about a lot, is neurodivergent and individuals and neurodiversity. Now, can you talk a little about that?
Sure. I think Case Western Reserve University is a great example of our student incoming class. We have about 23 to 25% who register with our office. Now, that's everything from air conditioners to emotional support animals, but the majority of people who come to us for support are students with mental health illness, learning disabilities, learning differences, ADHD, things like that. So psychological disabilities overall are overwhelming category. So thinking about neurodivergence, it's really what we do here at CASE. We have top education, and with that comes the top minds, and the top minds are not all alike. They're very diverse. And so we have these little blips that go along with that. That might be ADHD, that might be a learning difference. And so our office is here to support everyone coming and having access to that education. I think it's also important to remember that neurodivergent is a new term, but think of all the wonderful people we could have in that category. You mentioned Einstein earlier.
Yes.
This is not a normal thinker.
Right.
And we celebrate that because we got to see what that creativity can do in the world of physics. And I think that Case Western Reserve is a great place to think about neurodivergent student coming, finding their quirk, meeting other people who are like them, and finding their tribe.
Yes. And, I've often said, and I think particularly knowing my son who's dyslexic, his, he had challenges with phonics in particular, but and memorization, but his visual spatial skills are just off the chart. And seeing the skills that go along with different ways of thinking, solving problems in our more complex world, we have more complex problems, and we need a broader range, a diversity of thought.
Yes,
right?
And that's something that Ashley helps us with in the chapter where she's talking about the astronauts. Remember that?
Yes. Oh, this is towards the end of the book, and so if you get bogged down a little, I have to say she bogs down around page 95. Skim that. Read 1 through 90 twice because it's really great. Then get to page 1, around 125. She starts talking about the case for disabled astronauts. She said they offered an example. They did a study of the Gallaudet 11 deaf men recruited from Gallaudet University in the 1950s and 60s for a NASA study of motion sickness, because congenitally deaf people don't get motion sickness. I didn't know that.
Didn't know that either.
But they didn't consider them as astronauts. They just tested them. They only considered tall, fit men back then. It was only men, and they needed to be tall. And this one small person is saying, like, small people would fit better, right?
And small people might be better for space because they have a lower center of gravity.
Yes, and they said short women with big thighs typically do better in the mock, not they don't pass out as
in
easily.
the models, right?
Right.
Keep their consciousness.
And then this woman who's blind was saying that in space, sometimes there's low light, or when the power goes out, like if they had had a blind person, that blind person would have known where everything was.
Yes.
When everything goes dark. So that was my favorite part of the book, when she talks about, and I wish she did that more, these special skills that come from being disabled or differently able, and we see that a lot.
I think it's really exciting to think about what the diversity of thought can offer us. And I think that's one of the things. If you read this book and you're ever thinking, oh, well, I didn't know that, I didn't know this, it's because this is a voice we haven't heard enough of. So I'm really appreciative, and I was really excited when I found out this was going to be the common reading, because it really turns, I think, the attention to what we do for the university and what the university as a whole does for the world, because we are pushing out new technologies that are helpful for people. Now we need that other voice of, let's bring the people in while we're doing the development. So I think it's a really good way that CASE can contribute to this conversation.
Well, she talks about that a lot. Like, these technologies should not be given to people and saying, look, we've solved all your problems. But so how can we get more voices in this?
I think that's a great question. I think the number one thing I look at is, I go back to my history as a K-12 and now a higher education administrator. I have seen children at all levels of their education, and where there are barriers, where we work to remove those barriers, then we can see more and more of those special students who will eventually come to CASE make it through those filters. So at every step, we have to have accessible learning, universal design, teachers who care. And then when they get here to CASE, we can continue that tradition. I also think that we need to remember that just because something is technologically great and shiny doesn't mean it's going to fix all the problems of the disabled person that we're trying to make the technology for. So that's why I like the author's opinion of bringing in technology for people, not at people. Technology is wonderful. I mean, we were at a tech school, but without the people, without the environment accessible, it won't matter. The technology will never get to the person. So there's other barriers. I really like the idea of bringing in people earlier, bringing in people who are students, having them give their opinion of their technology much, much earlier. We know about what happens when reference man was used for safety equipment for women. Disastrous. So same kind of thing, bringing in people early on, asking them, what do you need? What would be nice for you to have? What adaptation are you currently not able to do that you'd like to do?
Of course, and so centering the voice of the user, but also the user can become the designer as well.
Exactly. And that's what we can do here at CASE.
Yes. Yes. So I think the one thing is, it's not until page 56, but I think this sentence sort of really tells us what the book is about. Framing disability as the problem turns attention away from the real problem. The world is set up to exclude disabled people. And if we change working on changing our systems really helps. This book is about 20 years old, but I pulled this out today. I found it on my bookshelf back here. I'd read it because I was fascinated by sign language, and I'd taken sign language in college. But then a friend of mine, a professor, Mark Aronoff at Stony Brook University, was a linguist, and they were looking at how language develops, and looking at a language that developed without outside influences. They found this in a Bedouin community in Israel, and this Bedouin community in El Said, there are 3,500 residents, and about 1 in 25 is deaf. So that's a 4%. Now, in the general population, 0.1% is deaf. So this is a huge number, 150 people. And their community, most the hundreds of people speak sign language. They've developed their own sign language, which was the interest of the book. But what was fascinating to me is that when most people spoke sign language, people in the community who were deaf were not disabled in any way, because it was like they spoke a second language. There were two primary languages in the community. Right. In fact, they even asked, we're interviewing a family, and they said, is anyone in your family disabled? And the man said, no, nobody is. Well, then they realized, like, well, one of the family members was deaf, but they were not disabled in this community.
It's because the environment was not disabling.
Right.
Everyone spoke their language. It was accessible.
Yes.
And so the more that we can universally create environments that have forethought of who might be here, who might be using this space, the more that we do that, the more that we can be accessible, the better, the less disabling the environment is. She talks about disabling environments and that the future is disabled. I think a lot of that is her techno-futurism. And so I think you have to take a little bit of that with grains of salt. But I do think thinking about the environment, thinking about the buildings we build, the classrooms we build, the courses we build, the curricula we build, are we creating environments that are more accessible or less accessible?
So you mentioned that there's some advisory groups.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, could you talk about that?
Yeah, so this year our office has started a faculty advisory group and a student advisory board to help us really spread the message of what we do in our office within the community, but also to get feedback about how we can better serve our faculty and our students. So this is a really exciting opportunity that came out of just thinking about how can we center the voices of who we serve as an office. So I think we talk to our students a lot, but we're not always able to listen. So this is a way that we can listen to our students, see what their concerns are, see what about our processes maybe are disabling, and how can we help to better serve them.
So is there, if someone's watching this and finds out, how could they get involved in that?
I would reach out to our office, disability@case.edu, and just ask. We have an application that we're working on right now. So these are things in the works for this semester.
Okay. Yeah. Here's another question we wanted to ask is, in what ways does SHU challenge the idea that technology will inevitably improve the lives of disabled people?
Well, when I read the book, it seems like SHU was imagining technology and disabled people on two separate tracks, if you imagine it that way. And that technology is moving in this direction of making these better, brighter, faster prosthetics, these super new feet and hands that people can use. And on the other hand, you have the disabled community, which some people say, yes, this is fabulous. I want all of these new things, all these new technologies. But others are saying, well, wait a minute, where's our voice in that? That's a wonderful technology, but that's not the problem I'm having on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
So I think that this book challenges us to listen more to the people that we are trying to serve, and listen more to the community of disabled people who can tell us what they need. So with the author, she's challenging us to be able to hold both truths, to be able to hold the truth of, yes, we sometimes make technologies that are not always perfect for our people that we're trying to serve. And yes, sometimes we can get more input from the community and get more input faster, sooner rather, so that the technology that is made is actually something that can be used and is useful. There's a example in the book she uses, using herself as an example, saying that she uses a roller when she's at home instead of a wheelchair, and she has all these, kind of menagerie of things that she uses. And she says, I've made my way to adapt through my life. If someone was here trying to make a prosthetic for me, they would see exactly what I need and exactly what I'm, having trouble doing. Maybe we're not doing enough of that research on the front end. And I think the author's argument is that we need more voices of disabled people in the beginning stages of technologies. Because otherwise we're making technology at people, and we're making things that we think are great ideas, but we don't know if this can actually be used by the people we're trying to serve.
Exactly. And to catch you up on the author, she was already working in the area of technology, and I think she was already at Virginia Tech, teaching and helping students realize how to use technology to make the world better. When she had cancer, she says she does love her prosthetic leg. She doesn't want anybody to think she doesn't. She talks about how feet are like the big deal when they go to when you go to these trade shows, the newest foot, but this newest bionic foot doesn't solve all your problems. That sometimes it's easier in life to be in a wheelchair than to not. Sometimes it's easier to use a roller. She uses a roller because she can zip around her house, but she knows where the obstacles are. Having this leg is one of the tools that's useful to her. She also speaks of having chemo brain. She uses that term a lot. So she's now feeling a little intellectually disabled from her chemotherapy. So she comes to it from that place.
And I think the author is challenging us to say that, everyone is not going, to use your example of the foot, these wonderful feet, if this is not the problem that you're having, then this doesn't solve the problem. So doing the research in the disabled community to find out where are the touch points, where could we be helpful, and then go with the technology.
Right.
Developing it.
Hey, Karen. Pardon me, Carmen. We do have a question that's in the chat, so I'm going to read it to you. And so it's, how can workplaces create more inclusive environments for neurodivergent employees?
Great question. I think in workplaces, we have to think about deadlines, because there are deliverables, of course. We have to think about social expectations, and these are part of the work environment. So these may be places where folks who are neurodivergent may need some adaptation. For example, flexible deadlines, or increased touch points for where projects need to be, so that there is more accountability for the whole team. We also need to think about things like how we work. Do we work best with our door open? Do we work best with our door closed? How can we be informed about neurodivergence as individuals so that we can be more inclusive in the workplace? Deadlines are important because, of course, there are deliverables, but thinking about ways in the project to organize so that the deadlines maybe have a little bit of a cushion, things like that. I think also just being more open to the fact that you are working with currently people who are neurodivergent, and you will continue to. As our author challenges us, the future is disabled. There's not going to be less people, there's going to be more diversity. And so understanding that is what's coming, getting those people in the room and asking, what do you need? What would be helpful? Again, talking with instead of at the folks that we are trying to support.
Yeah, when when you're talking about these accommodations, these are things that help everyone. Like some people work best in quiet, and some people want to go sit by people because they think better. They want music. They want headphones, of course. Having she does talk about that. Wearing noise dampening headphones are available and socially unremarkable to don. So so that if you need quiet, or if you need music, or if you need white noise, or that that helps everybody. Another thing she talks about, I was looking up, like when you were answering this, like what were some of the things that Ashley speaks of, and she says all the fluorescent lights are dead and replaced by something that doesn't trigger migraines, and there are no flickers. So
yeah, and I think in that same chapter, she talks about meeting with a graduate student who asks, "Can we do less eye contact today?"
yeah,
Just that, not having to mask for that 30 minutes or that hour, you can still be productive, you can still get work done, but you don't constantly need to do the eye contact that we socially construct as being normal.
when you use the term mask, not having, can you explain that?
Sure, yeah, that's a term that is used in the book, but basically masking is a term that people with disabilities use to hide their disability. Lots of what we talked about today has been folks who are neurodivergent, people with learning disabilities. These folks have invisible disabilities. So if they're masking, they are kind of taking advantage of the fact that they can pretend to be normal. But it takes a lot of energy and a lot of effort to do that. And people talk about being very tired after masking all day, doing the social tasks or the social expectations that we have.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about it, it is exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's also people with the more physical disabilities, you know, pretending that you feel good when you don't. You know how, we all know how exhausting that is, you know, to be like, and, you know, she talks a lot about that people want to see the people with physical disabilities that pretend the structural problems of access can be overcome by the right, plucky, can-do attitude.
Yes.
Yes. So,
and I think that's an expectation that we put on disabled folks to be this inspirational figure or to be this person who's overcome their disability when they're a person living with their disability who has good days and bad days.
yes. We want to have the final question, how we can promote a more inclusive and equitable future for everyone.
So it's a big question, but I will start out by saying the first thing we can do is educate ourselves, is to understand that people are going to have differences and that that's part of our world now. And that when we have an environment that people are giving us feedback that's disabling, that we should look at that. If we're going to have a future that is disabled, as the author says, then we have to be prepared for those differences. I like to think about them as differences because as we learned in the book and as I've learned through life, just because there's a disability doesn't mean there's not a different ability somewhere else that's hidden. But I think that we need to look at our environments, look at our attitudes towards ableism and technoableism. I think reading this book is a good way to say, where do I stand on some of these issues? What do I think about it? And just to start to think about these issues, talk about it with colleagues, talk about it with people that you trust. Why, when you go to a research project, do they not think about how can we include a disabled voice at this table? Do we have a space for that on this particular research or project? So I think we have to make room. We have to make room for folks that are different than us and expect them to be there.
Yeah. Well, and I think we also need to be very mindful that of the special talents and skills and different ways of thinking that people that are different from us bring, and how appreciating that makes us all better and helps us all.
Absolutely, because someone can have a physical disability and they may have a psychological disability, but they may be able to create and to give back to society and community in other ways. And we need to start looking past what the disabilities are.
So, of course, join us August 18th, or if you can't make it, you can watch that, the live stream. You can contact the Alumni Relations Office for more information, alumni relations at case.edu. They're always happy to talk to you, or you can just look at the resources online. And then our next page turners will be in January, where we'll Anthony Jack will be the on campus talking about the dignity of work on campus and beyond. What we will talk about probably is his most recent book, which is called Class Dismissed. So that's what we'll be talking about in January. Hope you'll join us then. That will be part of the MLK convocation. So thank you for joining us. We hope to see you next time.